Hi, and welcome to another episode of Production Value Matters, the business events podcast. And today is another in our monthly series of industry panel discussion. Uh, Unfortunately, Evan isn't with us today, but as usual, we have Candice Davis from BFairs and Nick Borelli from Zenith. So, hi, Candice, and hi, Nick.
Hey.
Oh, hey, how are you? So, going on the series that we seem to be stumbling upon throughout this month on setting yourself up for success as an event professional in 2025, we thought we would talk today about industry conferences and recommendations, some thoughts about what is happening in that sort of vertical and market in our industry, and also sort of thinking outside of the box of some things that we maybe aren't on our radar, should be on our radar in the sort of non-endemic pathway. There's a couple that I think about every once in a while that I think event professionals should attend and or go look at. But I'm really keen to hear from Candice and Nick today about what their thoughts are on those sort of non-endemic and the endemic conferences and trade shows, and what they mean for development of your people and your process throughout the year. But before we get into the discussion, just a reminder that if you're interested in more rich content like this, please go to productionvaluematters.com where you can subscribe to get early access to episodes and deeper content. And if you like the content that we produce, do us a favor, please subscribe on whatever listening platform you're on and leave us a review. It always helps. Okay, so Candice, why don't you sort of give us your top five, of the industry conferences, what are like the top five that you think an event professional should be attending and or keeping on their radar?
Okay, that's a good question. There are so many, but I would have to say, um, IMEX, obviously, I think a lot of people will say something along those lines first. I mean, it's, one of the top in our industry. It's amazing to go to. It's really eye-opening, very inspiring, collaborative. You see all the creativity come out, with every, company that's there, exhibiting, and it's incredible to see. Not only that, but also the keynote sessions, the panels, all that's wrapped up into the agenda too. I will say South by Southwest, I have to throw that out there. It is very inspiring. As a creative, someone who has been in the music industry, it's ingrained in my brain, South by Southwest, because everybody in the music industry goes there, of course, but now it's open up to every industry, everybody. And now they have like an EDU type conference for professionals who teach, and they have so much going on that a whole week of South by Southwest. And so I definitely have to say that. I mean, what better is to bring, professionals together in a music environment, You can go to the conference and the festival. It's kind of, the best of both worlds. So I'll say that. I know for one that we go to as well is Event Tech Live. Have to shout out to Adam. It's great. I know there's one, of course, in Europe and then here in the States now. So that's great to go to and meet other professionals within the events industry specifically. And I, also will have to say ASAE. So I know this is more, association kind of based professionals who go most likely to ASAE for that type of content, but it is a showstopper, honestly. I went a few years back and the trade show floor was booming. It's a great way, of course, for people to go and exhibit too. That's why I was there as well. But the content was, I mean, very on point, for things that were going on currently within associations, and some really interesting topics that they had for keynotes and around the panel discussions. Those would have to be my top. I know Expo also, like Expo is a great one. So those would have to be my top five.
Yeah, it's interesting that, and we'll touch on this subject a little bit later, but South by Southwest is one of those examples of what I would consider slightly non-endemic, right? Like it's not specifically targeted towards event meetings, convention professionals in any sort of market or capacity. But it has expanded to like almost an omnibus kind of festival, right? So it like yes, it started as a music festival, but then slowly but surely built into the music business, and then through the music business went into marketing, and then commerce, and then now experiential and events, which is quite interesting. Nick, what are your sort of top 5?
Well, like, all I do is go to industry events. Like, I don't know about I assume most event industry people probably go to maybe 1 a year, probably the bulk 2 a year, some, maybe they go to their chapter things. I was just saying earlier before I got on, I looked at my list. I went to 30, meeting and event industry chapter events last year. Nearly, I would say just about as many, um, annual conferences as well, and this is just for people in the meetings and events industry. So, like, I was at one for a week 2 days ago, convening leaders with PCMA. That's definitely on my list. What's great about that show, there's a bunch of different reasons I really like it. Um, First of the year is really great. I mean, when you need alignment, you need to figure out what the trends are immediately, out of the holidays and get yourself geared up and that recharged energy you need. Um, I think they punch above their weight class when it comes to the caliber of speakers that they have. I think that's probably due to leveraging the attendance has buyers for those types of speakers in the audience. I would assume if I were them, I would be negotiating around that. The Amal Clooney and Liz Cheney entertainment by Gwen Stefani for a conference of 4,000 people, like the math doesn't add up normally. I mean, the sponsorships are quite good, but there's not a lot of them. I mean, in my opinion, like there's 40 main exhibitors at that show, maybe a secondary kind of sponsors, probably another 30. That's all I do when I was sitting at that show. My friend, which I think at least Matthew knows, Dustin Westling. We were at the Gwen Stefani performance, and we were just trying to figure out the profitability and like what the charges were, and we're no fun. We just realized. So more drinks for us was necessary. I think some of the ones that were said are definitely must attend events. For me, it's very much like, I mean, I not only most of these people clients, and I speak at their shows. Like I've never missed an IMAX as an example. I've been to every single one of them. I go to Frankfurt and in America. I will say that if I were being strategic and wasn't going to as many, I would go every other on some of these shows to get more variety. I think that's a strategy if your end goal is just to get the maximum amount of variance in what you try to absorb. Looking at like lists and stuff like that of things that I've been to, like some of the ones I don't go to every single year. I do like the consumer electronics events. I used to work for a trade show company that worked at uh, CES, IFA Berlin, Mobile World Congress, Computech, which is in Taipei, and IFA China. I would say one of those in your life is a great digital signage expo. One of those is really really good, or an Infocom if you, or NAB if you're more into the production side. I've been to all of those, but I don't go to them all the time. But I have experiences in each one of those that are fairly inspiring. Of like, oh man, like this is who does that, or like what a drone show could look like, or whatever. So it really just depends on your specific discipline. For instance, if I was in like the financial sector, I would go to Money 2020. That show is very, very cool. I mean, they push the envelope. I love a show where I can tell that they are risk taking, and not in a negative way, but in a way that it's like, oh, wow, that's not a rinse, wash, and repeat. Like they're doing something new and they're trying something out. Those types of shows are really great. A lot of like events that are aimed at like user conferences. I go to a lot of those as speakers as well, and I see a lot of risk taking in a good way at those too. So if you can find yourself into some of those, I mean, like the biggest event industry user conference is probably CVent Connect. But Emerald has Emerald X. Shepherd has Shepherd Sandbox. So there's quite a few out there that are quite good too. But for me, it's like the reunion style shows are the ones I really love going to, because it's just like a networking synergy, of like everyone just connects and what have you. So for me, it's like IMEX, convening leaders, Expo, ASAE, and then I really like SEMA too. This will be my fourth year going to that this year. And that's between that or and experiential marketing summit and exhibitor live. If you're looking for sponsor activation type things, I could just list off every show and what I think about all of them. Um, I signed up for three of the same roundtable event this year because I went to one of them last year and I was like, I want as many of these as possible because it's everything all the other shows that I go to aren't, which is to say, it's 30 people, and it's not someone talking at us. It's all of us working things out together and having like a community. And I really enjoy that. And there is an organization called Lippman Connects that puts on quite a few different variations of that theme. I'm going to one in a few weeks, and then two more times this year for it's called Exhibitor Sales Roundtable, and it's for people who sell the sponsorships and exhibitions for events, which I have a lot more I could gain from that perspective. I mean, everything is organizer, but like who keeps the lights on? It's the sponsorships and like what innovation is possible there. What do those people want? What do they crave? I'm really into those conversations. So, that's the other thing you want to look at. Like, what kind of experience do you want? Do you want to have one where you're an attendee, like a C2 or a South by Southwest, or I like Comic Cons for that reason, where you're just like, I'm gonna try to turn off those things where I see the little things and ignore that and ignore the drape lines, ignore the kerning on the screens, ignore the chicken that's been out too long. Maybe you shouldn't ignore that, but like those things that you've learned, and just try to be a good attendee, and those shows I think are ones where you get that perspective of like, hey, you know what, it was a line, but I didn't mind that line, or there was a little bit of I saw this, VIP line, and that's interesting. Like I could cut this way. I wonder if I could do that. But like really being present at as an attendee, I would definitely say, once or twice a year, go out and do that. And then for experiential, I am like an addict of going to the Meow Wolf exhibits. They're not events, they're not, I mean, they're certainly not industry events. They're not even events. It's just experiential art in a venue that has been designed by hundreds of artists for you to take it in any way you want. And like for me, like there's something, even so many things removed from an event, but it's just the impact of intentionally designed architecture on people, and like how does this atmosphere make me feel? So variety is it. I think that's what I'm going to preach.
There's a point I want to go on about going to money 20 money 20. But my top five, it kind of breaks into like three broad categories. A couple that are really about business development, right? Like that's the main objective, that I'm going to find my customers, right? And so me and the sales team, we go off and we go to a conference that will have our customers in this industry. So those things are IMEX, they are SEMA and Experiential Marketing Summit, because it's got, the attendees and the market there is specifically for that. Then there is the I want to be inspired. I need to learn. I need some education. Those are typically association events that have an educational track that I'm sending my people to and myself to for inspiration and thought leadership and all of those things. And then there's and LDI is a perfect example on the production side, right? Like I send our teams down to that one, and the other one, which is escaping me right now, which is the audiovisual industry. Like LDI is very live design, lighting heavy. Yeah, and the other one, which is escaping me at this particular moment, is very audiovisual industry holistic, right? And so I send myself and my teams down there to find inspiration and say what products are coming out and keep a like a pulse on the market. And then the third one being those non-endemic ones, as you said, like, and there's two reasons that we do that. One, and this is why I want to go back to Money 2020 as a perfect example. Like if you work in the financial vertical of the market, you do financial events, you know work for financial
That's
clients,
probably
all
your IMEX
it
if you're in
is,
that world.
like, you
Yeah.
should be going to where your customers are, right? You know, chambers of commerce, you know, here in Toronto, we have the Toronto Region Board of Trade,
I worked
which
on that event once.
yeah, yeah, I mean, everybody's worked on that event, to be honest, in
TR
this market.
bot, is
Yeah,
that right? Like,
Torbot, yeah. And so, you know, that's one that we will constantly go to because the senior leadership, the directorial leadership of the organizations that we hold as customers or are looking for as customers, like we want to be where they're seeing stuff, right? We want to be going to Money 2020 for financial stuff because if we were targeting banks and financial services institutions, that's where they're going, right? And it's not necessarily about you know, business development, always a great thing. You know, there's an ROI that we always have to factor in there, and I think any organization does. But we also want to see what's inspiring them, right? So that by the time that Bank A comes to us 6 months later and says, "Hey, we're putting on our user conference or our sales meeting, and we want to do this thing." Well, we're aware of that thing because we saw it at Money 2020. You know, it and staying in that sort of narrative is vitally important. Where I want to sort of go with the conversation is, you know, there. Let's map out a couple of different types of events, as we said. Like there's the ones that are for business development, for team development and education, and then inspiration, right? And so, what are your opinions on uh, uh, how organizations are to sort of manage their portfolio of attendance? Like Nick, you're in a position, as you said, you go like to a million chapter events in the association, and you go to events all over the world. Like you're always on a plane. I feel is usually your away notice says I'm on a plane here, kind of thing. So you know, tell me like if you're an organization thinking about okay, and we shared a list between the group prior to this where there's and I'm just counting it over again 75 different industry or industry adjacent conferences that happen year over year.
I should
Uh,
give you my list. I mean, there's
yeah,
even more than that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Do you have like a rough count on that? Like,
I mean,
how many rows of data are you talking about?
annual. I mean, they're all mine are broken down into networking, business development, education, and I have one that's speaking that ends up just being all the ones that I'm speaking at. But yeah, I mean, like mine are very much like based around what the strategic outcome is going to be for the organization. You know, like where are we exhibiting there? Are we just going there to network? Are we going there for education? And then, you know, the presentation part ends up being that. And then there's some that are on a couple of those lists. I mean, some of them are signed up that, you know, already for the year. You know, like there's never going to be a year where I'm not at IMEX. I mean, it really depends on the scale of your organization too. Like, and the other one I would say is probably professional development for your business, depending on the scale of your business. Like, if you're a small business owner, there's all kinds of other, I would say, fairly mandatory types of events that you should attend, and they easily could be local. They could be, you know, your council of small business if you have something like that, or like Toronto Board of Trade is a good example for that. Or there are industry specific ones too. There's one called CISO, which is the Society of Independent Show Organizers. There's an event that takes place in January. I was at last year, put on North Star, called IPEC, which is Independent Planners Conference. I don't. My acronym brain is soup,
Well,
but
we do love our acronyms in this
we
industry.
really do.
Yeah.
I had the opportunity this past week to, you know, be at Convening Leaders, and we brought two new team members with us who had never been to an event industry conference ever, and I just enjoy the heck out of hanging out with people like that because
Yeah.
I'm like, you want an info dump in my sort of comfort zone, you know, in an hour I will overload your brain. You know, and you can figure that out over the next time. But you know, I was saying like, well, you know, that's why, the CVBs end up investing in this and that, and they're like, "Well, slow down. What's a CVB?" And I'm like, "Okay, here we got to start at the beginning here.
Sure,
This is
yeah.
cool. Like,
Yeah.
I need to, and that's great. I mean, like, I was
Mhm.
like, please always never feel like you need to pretend you don't know. Just ask me, because like it's kind of a failing of mine to, I guess, not read the room, but like most rooms I'm in, that's that you wouldn't say convention and visitor bureau a number of times or destination marketing organization. Meanwhile, those aren't all those things. So like if you want to kind of get like an intro into it, like that's a thing. But the small business stuff is like I think also very important. Like there's a significant percentage of the events industry of which would be categorized in that way. And I think finding your peers who are at the same scale as you is like so important, because like that should be kind of foundational in your network. I mean, this, Matt. I've done this too as when I was running my own business. Like you just, even if it's just you and your team, you need more than that. And having some kind of refresher on different business elements outside of the specific industry trends and things like that. You have to also run the business. So if you can find those types of education at a place that also has the sort of trends and the inspiration too, that's great. I would say that the scale of something like IMEX is probably one of the few that probably has both next level education of like unique tricks on ways when working on conferences in China. Also, here's how to set up an LLC. Like all of those things probably are in the same place. So like that's why it ends up being something for everybody kind of show. But yeah, and the other thing is that we haven't even really got too much into this. There's really no events industry. There's a fairs industry and a festivals industry and a weddings industry and a conference industry and a trade show industry and this. So it also depends on like where you're really spending the most of your time. If you're a supplier, and I think that I've been one many, many times, and you're like, I don't, doesn't matter to me. Like, just give me an event and point me at some business and that's putting on something experiential and I can make it happen. I would say that if that's you, definitely go to the superlatives in each one of those corners. You might find a connection. You might be like, oh, I could be doing just this. I could like turn and burn this kind of work all the time. I love this kind of stuff. And you might like that. You might be a production company when you're exposed to associations and you're like, oh boy, I just click with these people. Or you might be like, and another example of a production company, I feel like that's the business that can work in any one of these. You could go to the fairs industry and you're like, I actually love, like, I maybe you had a background in outdoors or whatever, and you find that like, yeah, this is great. Like I've got the equipment for this. They don't care about it being polished or whatever. They just care that it's consistent, and we have a good time and we're easy to work. So like you just might find that out. But like I would say, if suppliers specifically, like dabble a little bit in all of these arenas um, at first, and then specialize. But like don't put the cart before the horse and think
So
that the events industry is only one thing.
can we can we move on to like a little bit of that kind of advice, right? So as we said, there's a 75 on this list. You've got 6,000,002 on your list, Nick. It can be overwhelming. Like if you are, whether or not you are running an in-house team, an independent planning firm, and or a production company. Maybe you're a supplier of audiovisual equipment, of chairs and linens, or whatever it is, right? You then look at this hundreds of events. How do you and Candice, maybe because I'm sure you have to go through this with your teams and trying to figure out what your event stack is going to be for the year. How are you prioritizing? What advice do you have for anybody sort of looking at this list to say, how do I narrow this down and what are the purposes that I should be fulfilling?
Yeah, for us, it's where our customers, what are they going to? What are they interested? What are potential prospects? What are they going to this year? So for us, that's kind of the goal, is to be where our customers are and also take advantage of being around them and being with them at these shows and these conferences, doing meetups with them outside of the conference agenda and the trade show, schedule, do customer dinners, add in prospects too. So that's a big part of our goal. Outside of just getting prospects on the trade show floor, you can't always that doesn't just come, it's not super duper easy in some instances. So you have to make more channels of getting those people to come and reaching out to them and inviting them to really cool things that are happening outside of the event. And not to say, during trade show floor hours, we're doing something over here. Not That's not the case. But after trade show hours, hey, meet us at this really Michelin star cool dinner and just come and have dinner with us, get to learn more about what we do. We want to learn more about what you do. And so it's not like a sales trap. Of course, not at all. It's like, hey, let's just talk. Let's meet outside of this space and this conference and this trade show that we're at. So that's really our goal when we look at what maybe top 5 trade shows and conferences that we're going to be at. It's really looking to see where our customers are. And for our customers, we're looking for those event planners and then also marketing directors.
And and so when you guys are evaluating so you're sitting in front of a list of 75 different conferences, right? So obviously it's like if it's the Association of Red Shirt Manufacturers, right? Like you're like, that's not a thing for us because it's not going to
Yeah.
have the right people, right? So that's
Right.
step one. So it's
Mhm.
it's really about paring it all down and saying, the reason I said sort of top five at the beginning is that I think that for most, to Nick's point, there's a lot of small to medium-sized enterprise in this market, and they don't have unlimited budgets. They don't have the
Right.
budgets of like Hilton Properties or whatever, or who is going to spend billions of dollars across like, yeah, we'll stick a guy in anything, as it were. And so they have to be really strategic. And I think that that first step, for if anybody's listening, sort of thinking, how am I going to go through this overwhelming list, is like pare it down and pick your 5 and test and measure and then go out there and be very specific. A point that you made, Nick, about you had sort of touched briefly on specificity within the industry, right? I got to stop using the word industry because I think you are right, Nick, that we are not quote unquote an industry. That's a different debate topic that we'll put on another panel. But we certainly are a series of markets, right? And like there's an overall umbrella market that sort of has some commonalities to it, but that the organizations and the individuals who understand that they have a specific market that they speak to, or markets that they speak to. AV being a perfect example that a light can be used in film and television, on a live event, in a conference, and in a fair, on a live sports thing, like all of those things
In
apply.
theater for musicians, I mean, it like
Yeah.
the experiences industries, is
Hmm.
probably the broadest, which includes like
Mhm.
things like theater and sports
Hmm.
and whatever. Like I find that like to some extent F&B and definitely to a larger extent production is the only like connective tissue I find between all of those places. And everyone else is like hyper specialized. And each one of those thinks that like when they hear the word events industry that like you're referring to them. And I find that interesting as someone who just like I float around, between all of them myself because I'm just an educator in experience design. And so for me, it's like, okay, what's the like for my specialty? Um, what's the best place, for me to gain education and to, to get better at what I do. And then to Candace's point, follow the ICP, who's your best clients, where are they at, be there with them. I mean, like one of the tricks that I do when I go to shows to get like an additional value is we invite people to come with us. So like it's either a lead, that we're like really, excited about. And like we've, it just sort of, it does make sense and it wouldn't be weird. Or more frequently, a client, like those roundtable events, as an example that I'm going to, like I'm bringing a different client to each one of those who is in that seat. And the two-pronged goal of being able to like give back to them and like spend some quality time with them ahead of time into the like the dinner concept that you guys do. Same idea, but you don't have to just have one goal. But I think that you can't ignore going to events to get better. Like I think that all of us need to because of the nature of what we do. It's just constantly shifting landscape. We all have to go to events for education. And I think if you're in any kind of like client facing role, we all have to attend events that are where our clients are. After that, I think the gravy is if you've got extra budget, and you want to replenish your sort of soul, I think you should attend events where there's no clients, where there's not specific education just for you. And then you can, and I always claim this is just like, just be an attendee, just be in the shoes of the people that you are sort of always focused on, even if you're focused on something for someone else who then is focused on the attendee. Everything centers around that. You have to, I think, to be really good, you have to be an attendee and work at being a good attendee, because then you get that wholly fresh perspective and you're not so bogged down in like trying to absorb the content or trying to make business happen. So like, depending on where you're at with your organization, you could get a diminished return on the education because you've been going to them for decades and you end up doing more business development stuff. That's fine. Or if you're in a more like leadership role, then like, and you have the ability not to have to, cultivate leads and you have a lot of education already, then maybe then is the time you go. Like a good example is, this is like the one that stuck with me for the longest time. C2, probably the best event to just be an attendee at, full stop. Internationally. David Peckinpah is a guy who is the president of Merritt's Holdings, all the Merritt's companies. So fairly large person in the events industry, and he attended that just as an attendee and saw Coppola, the director, Francis Ford Coppola. Yep. And he was presenting, this is like 15 years ago, and he was talking about being on set and managing a team and having each time that he creates a movie, he creates an organizing principle. And that organizing principle, as they collaboratively create something that is inherently creative but requires everyone's input, the organizing principle is the boss. The organizing principle, we all buy into it. So he heard that. He was in a place that he could hear that because it wasn't about his industry and he wasn't there chasing business. He heard that, and he was with another guy, Greg Bogue, who is in the C-suite there. And they said, we should develop an organizing principle for every one of the events that we work on. Like, this is transferable. This makes sense. And that's now one of their core master designer principles. But that came from being an attendee and being present and not having those other two, which are very valuable things they need to do. But so to me, like, that was the moment I'm like, I need to do that as often as I can, knowing that the other things are super important. But that just like hit me. It's like, okay, these people have seen it all, done it all, and they gave themselves space. And I think that space to hear things is where you get the next level transformation in your business. The education's good. It'll take you from, place 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. Great. It's the unexpected big leaps. That's where you have to get information from somewhere different. So I work on the B2B space primarily. I try to attend a pretty well put on large scale B2C show every single year, because it's apples to oranges. And that's good for me because I'm not just seeing, like, confirming my biases. Oh, there's one of those. Like Dustin and I at a party at night, we're like, here's the stilts and here's the this, and we're checking this stuff off. And, because we're the worst attendees. We're jaded.
Oh my God. I've
Like,
ruined so many theatrical
oh,
shows with my family.
yeah.
I remember specifically going to Phantom when it was still here in Toronto, and I took my
Mhm.
mom because she had always wanted to go, and
Mhm.
the whole candle scene in the catacombs
You tell them
happens.
how they did it.
And I told her how, like, I figured it out because that
Oh,
was, I
no.
was sitting there going, this is really interesting. I wonder if those are hydraulics, and I wonder, well, it's dry ice,
Yeah.
and she was like, stop ruining the
Yep.
magic, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Super Bowl halftime shows were awful to be around. Like,
yeah,
Yeah.
just
exactly.
put
Yeah.
us in another room.
Yeah, just give us some chips and put us in another room and we'll be
So,
fine. Yeah. So look, as we said, we got to sort of pare it down. We got to sort of be focused on objectives. Now that, one thing that I want to sort of bring up is strategy. And Candice, you sort of touched on it a little bit. I think especially in larger organizations and well, I mean, I think it's common for everybody. Even every time somebody, my team comes and says, "Hey, I want to attend this event," the first question I say is, "What's going to be the ROI?
Yeah.
Like what are we getting back from that?" Right?
Mhm.
It,
nobody's team's smaller than my team, so I can definitely tell you that there's that the size of your organization is not a limitation.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
understand.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
Mhm.
it's
my
the
point
mentality
being,
you just said.
yeah, my point being that like, so how other than like, I think in the business development, like there's a pretty standard way of looking at ROI there. Like we spend X amount of money, we got like we can attribute a bunch of revenue to it. Great. Can we give some advice on how we should be perceiving those educational events, those professional development events? And to your point, Nick, like going to C2 and getting this inspiration, just be an attendee and understand how it feels to be in that room. And, you know, how can professionals who are trying to convince their bosses say, "Hey, I want to go to C2," or bosses who are like, I kind of want to invest in C2 because I want to go there, but I'm having trouble understanding how I measure that success and how I measure that return.
You need to create new inventory. I mean, that's what happens. Even the example I gave, like they saw that Francis Ford Coppola presentation, they were present, they heard it, they didn't know what they were hearing. But it's the sending the people or being someone who is creative and hears things and then can and productize it. So like that, the idea that they said that we need to have an organizing principle for every one of our events. Um, I've been on teams that have developed five figures in organizing a or creating an organizing principle. Like 4 words that we got like tens of thousands of dollars for organizations, backed by 40 pages of why. But still, like that's an agency model, and depending on how creative you are as a business, um, yeah, I mean, that's a skill to cultivate, to be able to see something that opens your eyes that you can turn into a new revenue stream. Like that's how you should be thinking things. So when you're not just saying it wouldn't be cool, or now I know the new trend is this color orange. Like that's okay, but like what you should be looking for is I saw this thing, I saw how it was done, I have our angle on this, and I know how we could do that as well, and in doing so, we could potentially create a new revenue stream. If you have that kind of ability, or there's someone in that role in your organization, they should be exposed as often as possible to new things. Um, to me, it's like that's the mindset you have to have, is be able to not only translate that into like that's good to know, but also here's how I could bring additional value to my customers based on that inspiration.
And so, Candice, what is your sort of other than the sort of business sales metrics,
Mhm.
when your teams are going out for educational or inspirational events, like what is a metric that you want to apply? Is there a metric that you guys apply?
Yeah, I think professional development is a big one. So on top of, what Nick said, strategizing and thinking of new ideas to bring back to the company to help roll out, to make customers' lives easier. Maybe there's something that we haven't thought of yet in the product line. But just being an attendee, there's something really powerful about just, kind of leaving your jacket at the door and going, "Phew, okay, I don't have to be on today. I can just sit and learn and listen and just soak it all in." So professional development is really a big core value of who we are. And then also the mentoring sessions that you can get at some of these conferences are really invaluable because you're around these mentors who are, gosh, they've been in the industry for, 30 years, and or more. And just being around them, sitting with them, talking with them is really huge if you can get that opportunity. I know South by Southwest has some mentoring sessions that they do, which is super cool. Would love to see more of that with just across all of these conferences, just to have mentoring as a staple, for anyone who's coming, for those in the, like the younger generation, or heck, even us. Either we're being mentored or we're mentoring, So I think it's best to be doing both of those, especially for where we are, in our career right now, is to have those who are underneath us who are mentoring and they're shadowing us, like we talked about on one of the last podcasts, is really important. But also, we need to be mentored as well. So finding those people at conferences to connect with, who you look up to, is really huge for us as far as professional development.
We used to make a checklist, by the way, that we gave when I was with the larger organization to team members who were in this position. And in that, they had it was like a kind of a top 5 list. So you would go into it, and you would say, who are the 5 most impactful people that have, you can say are now in your network? What are 5 new ways that we can enhance our products what are 5 new potential clients? And if you have that and you see that as your sort of ROI as you're attending this event, and you're filling it in, uh and you come back with that, it's very holistic, and it's very satisfying for whoever's managing that person to see, okay, you've just leveled up essentially. We invested this and it's going to have a team impact. The other thing that they had to do was they had to present to the team some of their findings. So it wasn't just a professional investment, it was actually a team investment. That is something that I think, all most people who are listening to this are saying, how could I attend more of these events? They sound great. Originally, way back when, I had to put together a proposal, to who I was, working for. That's how I really honestly stumbled on speaking, because I was like, I did all that stuff, and I was like, by the way, I also could submit to speaking, and if I do that, then it takes all of this burden off of it. And they were like, well, okay, a lot of stuff looks good, but if it hinges on you speaking, if you can get this speaking, then you can go. And then I did, and then it sort of did itself. So, I mean, I don't know where that if that fits into most people's, if that's in your
I love
toolbox.
that phrasing
Great
of
idea.
like about it's not just about professional development,
Mhm.
but yeah, you do have to make that case as to so I'm going to go to this event and I'm going to learn this thing, but and it's going to be great for me, but it's also going to bring something new to the team, right? And new to this shared objective that we have as a company, as an organization. I think that's vitally important. And I'll make a final case for non-endemic things, and because one of I feel like we as an industry or as a market should sometimes get a little, as we said, either at the beginning of the recording or just in the preamble, we get a little pigeonholed, right? And it's easy to not have new ideas unless you go outside of that box and see how other industries, markets are handling common things. And to your point about Francis Ford Coppola's, principle or unifying principle, right? That a related industry, a related sort of endeavor, and it took a moment of serendipity of like, oh, I can take that and I can reframe it into my objectives of this organization, and that's a moment of inspiration, and that has happened, I can say anecdotally for me, that has happened, a few times where I've gone to an event that is not related to industry meetings, events, conferences, so on and so on, and I hear somebody talking about how they market tech, or that how they sell this, or how they, inspire teams, and I go, nobody's doing that in my little vertical, in my little pond. If I adapt that to involve lighting, my god, this is a great idea, and I come back to the team and I go, "Okay, guys, I just thought about this," right? So, especially if you're in leadership, if you are responsible, and accountable to the rest of your team as part of an organization, whether from leadership or, as part of the regular team, I think that's my biggest case for that is yes, you're gonna be in an echo chamber of colors and linens but this is the color trend of the year. It's like, okay, everybody heard that, right? Now you got to go out and apply that thought process to, marketing cars, or whatever it is, and go, oh, that's how they sell cars. Cars are a product. I have that product that I sell. Maybe I can apply those things here. And so that's my biggest case. So some final thoughts. If I guess let's wrap it up with a what is the biggest event you're excited to go to this year? Candace, why don't you start us?
It would have to be IMEX. I mean, I know probably every person who you would ask and, this part of our sector would say that. But truly, I mean, it's where you see what's going on this year, even kind of insights maybe into what may be coming past this year. So it's really, the gold standard of the industry that we're in that you kind of have to go. Like if you're not there, you will people will notice, it's that event, for all of us. So it's definitely IMAX. If I had to have a second one, it's probably just one you're looking for, but, back to South by Southwest, I just can't say enough about just meshing those 2 worlds of, being a professional, and then the other side of just the music side that kind of gets me excited and really inspired, because you have the professional development like we talked about earlier, you have those insights, those creative aspects that just come and spark when you're in that environment that's not so, black tape and, black curtains and it feels like just any other event. They strip that all out of the event, so it feels completely new and you feel like you're there. You feel like you are an attendee when you go.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nick,
Yeah.
what is the one that you're most excited about for the coming
Two
year?
2 days ago, I found out that in a couple weeks, I'm going to Utah for Rain Focus's Insight, which is like their user conference, and they showed me a lot of stuff that they're doing that are like really just outside the box and really creative, and they're taking some risks. But more importantly, I've never been to it. I'm running out of a lot of those experiences, so I my favorite event, or the event I'm always looking forward to the most, is the one I've never been to. I mean, I love IMAX. I'll never not go to IMAX. They've got me for life. All the reasons that you said, like, of course, but yeah, I'm excited about what I don't know, and I'm excited about things that I don't expect, because then I feel like I have a better opportunity to have like an aha moment when I'm like, my expectation just like don't know, could be anything. And it's a different community too. Like last year was in an event with an organization called Meetings Made Easy, and it was like their kind of like user event. Didn't really know their event, their organization that well, didn't know their community. They had been putting on these events for their customers for like years and years and years, and they had like a really awesome community, and like everyone was really they didn't go to everything, and I don't know, I just learned a lot. It was like so many new people to meet, etc. My problem with IMEX, if I have any negative with it, and this is a me thing, is that I'm definitely going to hang out with the same people I always hang out with, because there's at least 100 of those people, because there's thousands of people there. So the chances of me meeting someone new when there's that many people that I know is diminished. So, I mean, but that's why I go, because I go, this is like my reunion, my chance to connect with them. But at an event where I might not know anyone, that's exciting for me, because then it could just be anything.
Yeah, so I'll wrap up with mine. So other than IMEX, because again, to Candice's point, it's the premier event of the market vertical. We should all be there. So we're really looking forward to Experiential Marketing Summit.
Oh, it's a
Again,
great show.
yeah, it's a great show. It's because
I might
I
be there
like
too.
what's that?
I'm probably going to be there too.
Oh, cool.
I've been there a bunch of times,
Come
but
by and
it's a
say
great
hi.
show.
I like it because it's not the hugest, but it is the most focused on a very, very, very specific market, and so I love that for that. Infocom is the other AV one, which I'm really looking forward to going to, because that gives us like an ability to understand our market really, really well, and that's the main objective. And then the last one that I'm still looking to find the best non-endemic thing, like, other than attending a couple of events, because
Have you been to NAB?
not recently, no.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's not as specific as Infocom,
yeah,
as far as like the technology or whatever, but and it's really broadened its horizons to be not just like broadcasters in a classic sense. It looks like broadcasters as anybody with a phone is a broadcaster. So it's like kind of production meets content, as broad as a word as that. I mean, that's an interesting one potentially.
that's a good recommendation.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I like it.
yeah, certainly those are the ones that I'm most excited about attending. And again, because we pared down that list, we got really strategic. We started talking about plans and really started thinking about, well, what does this bring back to the organization, right? Whether or not it makes me a better leader or a better practitioner or one of the team, or ads business, or whatever it is. That was our main objective in looking at 75 events and going, well, you got to pick five, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, absolutely.
Couldn't just pick 5.
So thank you very much, Candice and Nick, for joining me on the monthly panel. As usual, we'll be back again next month. Again, if you want to get access to past episodes, get early access to future episodes, or any other deep dive content where we sort of go a little bit more feed in to all the topics we talk about on the show, go to productionvaluematters.com and you can subscribe there. And monthly, we do a AV advisor episode where we answer questions from our audience about anything they want to know about production. And so you can also send us a note at connect@burnproductionservices.com. Or if you find any of us on LinkedIn, send us a DM and we'll include that in a future episode. All right. Thank you very much for joining us this week or this month, and we'll see you next month. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Production Value Matters, the Business Events Podcast, is brought to you by Burn Production Services. To learn more about Burn Production Services and how we can achieve your business goals with meaningful event designs and elevated production value, head over to burnproductionservices.com. For tailored AV consulting, check out theavadvisor.com, where you can book a free 15-minute consultation. Also, be sure to search for Production Value Matters, the Business Events Podcast, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Thanks for listening.